The hum of the server bank was a low, steady prayer. Green lights blinked like disciplined fireflies in the chilled, dark air of the data center. My fingers flew across the keyboard, not monitoring network health but executing a series of trades on a decentralized exchange. The numbers on the screen weren't just numbers, they were a symphony, a perfect, predictable pattern only I could see in the chaos. A 47% return in 18 minutes. The thrill was ice-cold and absolute. It was a feeling I'd first known in a library at Harvard, solving a problem in quantum finance that had stumped my professor. The same click in my mind, the universe aligning into perfect, logical order. Back then, the air smelled of old books and ambition. Now it smelled of ozone and dust. My alias, Phoenix, was making a kill. Sloane Rutherford's money was growing. And Alara, the girl from the data center, was invisible. 3 years, it had been 3 years since the air smelled of ivy and desperation. The memory, sharp as a shard of glass, cut through the digital haze. My dorm room in Winthrop House was a sunlit mess of open textbooks, printed research papers, and the wilting orchid my roommate insisted improved our Chi. I was deep in the pattern, the beautiful, complex problem of my thesis, a world away. The ringtone, my mother's specific, insistent trill, was a dissonant clash against Batch's cello suites on my headphones. Veronica, her voice was a controlled press of air, the one she used for gallery openings or firing staff. You need to come home this weekend. Mom, I can't. I have this presentation on Monday that... Your sister, she interrupted, the control cracking for a microsecond, revealing something metallic beneath, has been formally expelled. It's not academic, it's a scandal involving a professor's husband. It's in the local news, Veronica, the Hartford Courant. A cold void opened in my stomach. Clay, dramatic, beautiful, perpetually skating the edge of disaster, always landing on a pillow of our parents' money and excuses. That's terrible for her, but what does that have to do with me coming home? The pause on the line was heavy, expensive. I could see her in her Crumculk study, looking out over the manicured lawn, calculating. We cannot have 2 daughters associated with failure, the optics are untenable. Another pause, you will withdraw gracefully, cite family reasons. The words didn't compute, withdraw from Harvard. For the semester, perhaps indefinitely, we need to present a united front. Chloe is fragile, we need to regroup as a family. You're asking me to give up my degree, my future. My voice was a stranger's, thin and reedy. I'm not asking, Veronica. The steel was fully exposed now. You are a part of this family, your sister, misstep, reflects on all of us. Your continued presence there while this festers is a constant reminder. We are offering you a choice, come home now of your own volition and we will support you, or we will be forced to cut you off. Financially, completely, think very carefully. Can you afford your next tuition payment, your rent? The click echoed in the sunny room. The perfect logical pattern of my life had just been overcrutted with a corrupt file. I was no longer a student with a future. I was a variable in a public relations equation, a liability to be balanced. The preferred term I would learn later was collateral damage. Chapter 2, the ledger begins. The family meeting was held in the informal sitting room, a space that cost more than most houses. My father, Charles, stood at the fireplace, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in hand, his back to us. My mother, Eleanor, was a flawless sculpture on the chaise lounge. Chloe was a puddle of designer cashmere and tears on the sofa, the very picture of contrite devastation. We've spoken to the dean, my father began, not turning around. A discreet withdrawal citing a family medical emergency is arranged. Your email account will be deactivated by Monday. I stood by the door, my suitcase from Cambridge still at my feet. A medical emergency, so we're lying. We are preserving, my mother corrected softly, what remains of this family's dignity. Chloe has suffered enough public humiliation. We will not have you flaunting your academic success while she pieces her life back together. It's unseemly. My success is unseemly. The laugh that escaped me was brittle. Chloe sniffled dramatically. Don't make this harder, Runner, it's just for a little while until things blow over. Things won't blow over, I said, my voice chillingly calm. This is the thing, this is my life, you're asking me to set it on fire to keep you warm. My father finally turned. His face was not angry but impatient, as if I were a column of numbers that wouldn't add up. We are asking you to be a team player. The family brand supports your lifestyle, Veronica. That brand is now under threat. You will do your part to shore it up. You have the resilience for this. Chloe does not. There it was, the final, brutal logic. I was the stable one, the reliable asset. And in a crisis, reliable assets are liquidated first to save the more volatile, valuable holdings. I was being sold off. That night in my childhood bedroom, a museum to a girl who no longer existed, I opened my laptop. I transferred the last of my saved money from my linked family account, Dulk for 187, 30 into a new, secret online bank account. I opened a blank spreadsheet. At the top I typed, collateral damage ledger. Line item 1, value of Harvard Economics degree estimated lifetime earnings premium, Tuthra 100,000 asterisk. Line item 2, tuition paid for current semester, $27,000. Line item 3, lost summer internship Goldman Sachs, $18,000 plus future opportunity. Line item 4, reputational capital/network access, to be calculated. Debtor the family. I hit save, the ledger was open, the debt was acknowledged. Chapter 3, Into the Grey. Alara, you're on rack 7, look for the blinking red on node 3. I nudged, pulling my company-issued hoodie tighter. Alara, a name I'd plucked from a star catalogue. It meant light. Ironic, as I worked the graveyard shift in the windowless, fluorescent-lit cavern of the Sierra Data Center outside Reno, Nevada. After leaving home, I'd taken the first bus as far as my money would go. The family, true to their word, had frozen everything. The graceful withdrawal was a press release from my father's office praising my devotion to family. I was a ghost. The data center job was mindless, monitoring server health, swapping failed drives, a digital janitor. But it gave me 3 things: cash, anonymity, and most importantly, unfiltered, high-bandwidth internet access. While the other technicians watched Netflix, I descended. I found the underbelly of the new American dream: crypto forums, darknet markets. Encrypted chat rooms where people spoke in code about blockchain forks and zero-knowledge proofs. My economics mind, trained to see patterns in traditional markets, went rabid in this lawless frontier. It was all psychology, greed, fear, and math. Pure, beautiful math. Nights in my rented cot in a shared trailer, I taught myself to code. I studied Bitcoin's white paper like scripture. I learned to read order books like tea leaves. I started with my last $500, trading on offshore exchanges with laughable security. My first big trade came during the China FUD. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. The market panicked on a rumor. Charts plunged in a red cascade. The herd was screaming sell, my logic screamed otherwise. The fundamentals of the network were unchanged. The panic was illogical. I leveraged my tiny stake 5x, a reckless, stupid move for anyone without absolute conviction. I hit buy. For 18 hours I didn't breathe. Then, as the rumor was debunked, the market snapped back like a rubber band. I sold. $500 became $4,872.16. It wasn't the money, it was the proof. In this grey, digital world, my mind was the only currency that mattered. Not my name, not my family, not the school on a diploma. My logic. My ability to absorb chaos and spit out order. I created a new identity on the trading forums, Phoenix, the mythical bird reborn from ashes. My posts were concise, my analysis merciless. I gained a following. Whispered offers for consulting began to appear in my encrypted inbox. The collateral damage ledger got a new entry. Line item 5, seed capital self-generated, $4,872.16. Interest compounded. Chapter 4, The Forge. Phoenix's war chest grew, $50K, $200K. I moved from Reno to Miami, a city built on new money and forgotten pasts. I rented an anonymous, sleek condo in Betrayal with cash under the name Sloane Rutherford, a fusion of old money solidity and revolutionary fire. Sloane needed a history. I built her one: a vague European education, a deceased, reclusive industrialist father, a portfolio managed by discreet Swiss lawyers. The paper trail was a work of art, fabricated across multiple jurisdictions. Sloane didn't trade, Phoenix traded. Sloane was for the physical world. I used my growing capital not to live lavishly but to invest in myself. I hired a former Mossad officer for personal security and situational awareness training. "You do not want to fight," he grunted in his thick accent as he taught me to break a wrist hold. "You want to end the threat and walk away, permanently." The violence of it was shocking, grounding. It forged a new layer of armor. I enlisted a former editor of Town and Country to teach me the subtle, unspoken codes of old wealth, which Falk whispered, new money. Which charity board seat screamed desperate? I learned to wear silence like a weapon, to make people lean in to fill it. My investments shifted. Phoenix began targeting early-stage tech companies, but with a predator's eye. I looked for brilliant, arrogant, often male founders in spaces like fintech, data analytics, and cybersecurity, spaces where my family's luxury goods brand was weakest. I looked for their blind spots, their emotional need for validation, their technical debt. I offered not just capital, but ruthless, strategic clarity. My term sheets were fair but ironclad. My due diligence was terrifying. I became known as the Silent Storm, an investor who appeared from nowhere, backed you to the hilt, and expected total, flawless execution. One of my first major coups was Oculus Predictive, a data firm that could model consumer behavior with unsettling accuracy. The founder, a Stanford wunderkind named Mark, was brilliant but prone to grandiose, expensive tangents. I took a 40% stake. At our first board meeting, when he began waxing poetic about a holistic brand aura metric, I spoke for the first time. Your algorithm's predictive power on coastal, urban millennials is 94% accurate. On suburban Gen X it drops to 67%. That's your vulnerability. That's where a competitor will gut you. Fix it, not the aura. I slid a single page of analysis across the table. His face paled. He fixed it. The company's valuation tripled in a year. The ledger updated. Line item 6, Oculus Predictive stake, current valuation, $12,400,000. Strategy: identify weakness, exploit efficiency, remove emotion. Chapter 5, The Return. The Winthrop Luxury Group article in the Wall Street Journal was a masterpiece of understated distress. My family's brand, built on heritage leather goods and discreet jewelry, was floundering. Failed to capture the digital zeitgeist, the article clucked. Succession concerns loom. A grainy photo showed my father looking tired outside their flagship store. Sloane Rutherford's private email to the WLG board was a model of compassionate capitalism. She expressed admiration for the brand's history, concern for its current trajectory, and offered a significant capital infusion to stabilize and innovate. She requested a meeting with the major stakeholders. I wore a simple, devastatingly expensive cream suit. My hair, once long and plain, was now a sharp, dark bob. Colored contacts turned my hazel eyes a cool, oceanic gray. When I walked into the WLG boardroom in Greenwich, the air shifted. My father, older, more strained, offered a practiced, grateful smile. My mother's gaze was an appraisal of my jewelry, vintage, impeccable, and my bag, not one of theirs, a subtle, brutal power move. Chloe, now VP of Creative Development, looked bored and jealous. Ms. Rutherford, my father said, shaking my hand, a savior in our hour of need. An admirer of craft, Mr. Winthrop, I replied, my voice lower, smoother than Veronica's had ever been. I didn't look at Chloe, not once. But also a realist. The brand is sick. I believe I have the medicine. Over the next hour I dissected their business with surgical precision. Their failed e-commerce platform, their tone-deaf influencer campaigns, their reliance on wholesale partners who were discounting them into oblivion. I spoke their language of margins and market share, but with the cold, data-driven clarity of Phoenix. I saw the moment my father's gratitude turned to unease. I was too good, too sharp. But the money I offered, a $15 million lifeline for a 34% stake and a board seat, was a siren song he couldn't resist. The papers were signed. Sloane Rutherford was now the single largest, most powerful shareholder in my family's company. I had bought my way back into the heart of the beast. Chapter 6, Poisoning the Well. My strategy was not to burn the house down. It was to rot the foundations slowly from the inside. My first board directive as Sloane was to reinvigorate the creative heart of the brand. I proposed giving Chloe, as VP of Creative, unprecedented autonomy over a new flagship product line, Winthrop Nouveau. I voted for it. The old board, eager to please their new sugar mama, agreed. I knew Chloe. She had taste, but it was derivative, trend-chasing, and wildly expensive. Without the editorship of our mother or the brand's old guard, she would spin into chaos. I made sure of it. Through back channels, I connected her with a visionary Italian leather supplier, a middleman who marked up inferior stock by 400%. I subtly endorsed her most extravagant, impractical designs in meetings. The Nouveau line became a running joke in the industry, overwrought, overpriced handbags that looked like dystopian armor. Millions were wasted. Simultaneously, I directed my Oculus Predictive Analytics team to run a supply chain ethics audit on WLG. The report they uncovered was damning. It revealed that a subcontractor in Malaysia, responsible for 30% of their signature silk lining, was using child labour and paying starvation wages. I, as Sloane, was horrified. I leaked the report not to a mainstream paper, but to a fiery, independent journalist whose YouTube channel was dedicated to woke-washing corporations. The scandal was perfectly targeted. It didn't just attack profits, it attacked the soul of the brand my mother had so carefully curated. The Winthrop hypocrisy trended for a week. My mother aged a decade in days. My father was besieged by calls from outraged partners. The ledger hummed in my mind. Line item 7, brand equity erosion, quantified in real time. Line item 8, familial stress index rising. Chapter 7, the sisters unraveling. Chloe in her chaos found solace in a new man, Tristan, a venture philanthropist with a tan too perfect and teeth too white. He dripped with the kind of casual wealth that screamed fraud to anyone who knew real money. My family, desperate for a win, adored him. An engagement was announced within months. I had my Oculus team run a background check so deep it would make a spy blush. Tristan's real name was Trevor. His venture was a shell. His wealth was a Ponzi scheme propped up by a few gullible heiresses. He was a magpie attracted to shiny, vulnerable things. I didn't expose him immediately. That was crude. Instead, I used a series of anonymous digital nudges. A fake email from a former associate warning Chloe, which Tristan would easily explain away as sour grapes, seeding doubt. A manipulated social media post linking him to a known con artist, quickly deleted but screenshot. I hired an actress to play a devastated ex-fiancé who confronted Chloe at a charity gala, sobbing about stolen jewels. The final stroke was digital. I had Phoenix create a flawless, fraudulent trail of evidence suggesting Tristan was not only a conman, but was secretly siphoning funds from Chloe's personal trust. A trust I knew was nearly empty thanks to her nouveau debacles. I leaked this discovery to my father's most paranoid business rival. The confrontation was not private. It happened at the country club in the main dining room. My father, red-faced, presented the evidence. Tristan cornered turned vicious, calling Chloe a spoiled, simple-minded liability. The scene was a masterpiece of public humiliation. Chloe's screams echoed under the vaulted ceilings. The engagement was shattered. The social fallout was nuclear. I watched it all from the balcony bar, sipping a martini. Sloane Rutherford, the concerned investor, too dignified to engage in the family drama below. I watched my sister's world collapse, a mirror of my own humiliation years prior, but amplified, public and utterly merciless. Line item 9. Sister's social capital and marital prospect value, $0. Line item 10, karmic interest collected. Chapter 8, the reckoning. The WLG boardroom was tense. The company was on the brink. The nouveau line was a write-off. The child labour scandal had killed wholesale. The family's personal disgrace had torpedoed the brand's aspirational value. Stock was worthless. The banks were calling in loans. My father, broken, sat at the head of the table. My mother's elegance was a brittle shell. Chloe was absent, sedated at home. "We need another infusion, Sloane," my father pleaded, using my alias like a prayer. "You can see the core value, the heritage, just help us bridge this gap." I, Sloane, steepled my fingers. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Then I reached into my briefcase, not the one from their brand, but a sleek, modern portfolio. I pulled out a remote. "A bridge," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "Yes, I built a bridge. It took me years. Would you like to see where it leads?" I pressed a button. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It showed a scanned image of the first page of the collateral damage ledger. My father squinted. "What is this?" I pressed another button. The audio filled the room, the crisp, clear recording of that fateful phone call from my mother 3 years prior. "We cannot have 2 daughters associated with failure. You will withdraw gracefully, or we will be forced to cut you off." The colour drained from my mother's face. A terrible, dawning horror began in my father's eyes. I stood. "The ledger," I said, my voice dropping into its natural register, the one they hadn't heard in years, Veronica's cadence but cold as space. "It details the debt. Principal, a Harvard degree, a future, a family. Interest, compound at market rate for 36 months. I looked at my father. "You don't recognize me, Charles. I'm the reliable asset, the one you liquidated." I turned to my mother. "The collateral damage, Elena." "Veronica," the word was a gasp from my father. The bridge I built leads back to this room, I continued. The capital that bought my stake was the capital you forced me to generate after you threw me away. Sloane Rutherford is a shell. The entity you are indebted to is Phoenix. And the creditor sitting before you is the daughter you sacrificed. I tossed printed copies of the final ledger page down the table. It showed a single, staggering number, the total valuation of WLG, their personal trusts, the mortgaged houses, the art collection. This is the settlement figure, the total debt plus agreed-upon damages. You will sign over every asset, every holding, every share, everything with the Winthrop name on it. It belongs to me now. You can't do this, my mother shrieked, the facade shattered. I already have, I said calmly. The shell companies, the proxy votes, the loan covenants, they're all in place. You have a choice, the same one you gave me. You can walk away with nothing but the clothes on your backs and a modest, anonymous stipend I will provide, enough for a small life somewhere no one knows you. Or I can press this button, I gestured to the remote, and send this recording and the full ledger to the Journal, the SEC, and every one of your remaining friends. You'll still lose everything, but you'll do it in a blinding spotlight of ridicule. Prison, for the financial malfeasance I've carefully documented, is also a possibility. The fight left them. It was the same calculation in reverse. They were the volatile assets now, and I was liquidating them to save the only thing of value left, my own peace. They chose obscurity. Chapter 9, What is Left? I stood alone hours later in the grand foyer of the Greenwich mansion. It was empty, echoing. The art was gone, sold. The furniture was sheeted. I had won. The ledger was settled to the last decimal point. There was no triumph, no vengeful glee, only a vast, hollow silence. The monster I had become to slay my monsters was now the only thing left in the room. I had wanted to prove they were wrong, that I was more than collateral. I had proven I was harder, smarter, crueler. Was that better? Weeks later, I sat at the head of a different table, in a glittering hotel ballroom. The Winthrop name was being retired. The remnants of the company were being folded into a new corporate structure. But tonight was for the Collateral Damage Scholarship Fund Gala. I had liquidated the entire family estate and poured it into the fund. Its mission, to provide full-ride scholarships and mentorship to young women in STEM and finance whose families actively undermine or dismiss their ambitions. A young woman, the first recipient, approached the podium. She was from a small town. Her parents had sold her computer to pay her brother's debts. She had coded her scholarship application on a library computer. This fund, she said, her voice clear and strong, told me I wasn't crazy, that my mind wasn't a liability. It told me I was an asset, to myself and maybe to the world. It gave me a pen to write my own future. She looked directly at me, Sloane Rutherford, the mysterious benefactor. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. I gave a slight, gracious nod from my table. Later she found me by the balcony. Ms. Rutherford, she said, still buzzing with adrenaline, I just thank you for seeing the potential. I looked at her, the fierce hope, the unbroken will. I saw a ghost, not of who I was, but of who I might have been if someone had handed me a pen instead of an ultimatum. I leaned in, my voice dropping, not to Sloane's cool tone, not to Phoenix's digital chill, but to something quieter, real. Don't thank me, I said. Just remember, the ledger always settles. Make sure you're the one holding the pen. I turned and walked away from the lights into the quiet night. The debt was paid. The story was over. A new, empty ledger was open. And for the first time in years, the only name at the top of it was my own.